Hello and welcome to the Brian Hornback Experience. This is episode 112. You know what? It's been a while. It's been a while because I changed jobs. And we'll talk about that on episode 113 or 117 or 130. I don't know. We'll talk about it sometime. But anyway, took a little bit of time off. Been trying to get candidates on. Had a lot of them on in September. If a candidate doesn't come on, it's because, well, they didn't return the message. And I'm not going to beg and plead for somebody to come on the Brian Hornback Experience. So tonight we have a candidate for state representative in House District 14, Amanda Collins. Amanda, how are you?
I am doing okay. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Well, you've got
recovering from Halloween.
Yeah. Well, we don't have as many kids in the neighborhood anymore. So we didn't have as many, and when you live on the short cul-de-sac that has a long hill, all the kids go down the long hill because that's where the mass candy is. And so they don't come down ours because they don't want to exert the extra effort to go down another hill. So we wind up with lots of candy.
Their big old bag of candy.
So we wind up with lots of candy. So I think we're going to try to send it with my wife, maybe, to get rid of it. We just certainly don't need it here. But so you've got school-age children. How was Halloween?
I sure do.
How was Halloween in the Collins home?
It was chaos as usual. I've got a high schooler who wants to do like teenage Halloween type things, not necessarily with their family. And then I've got a middle schooler who is like angsty about any of it. So kind of wishy-washy between I want to dress up and go trick-or-treating with my younger kiddo, or I want to go with friends, or I want to do nothing. And then we have our youngest, who is a third grader, who is like all in on the Halloween. So it's a lot of fun. It's just a lot of chaos too. So
Absolutely.
We are recovering today.
Well, that is
a very busy afternoon.
That is fantastic. That is fantastic. So you've got three school-age children. You've been married to your husband Dan for at least 20 years,
Forever.
18 years, something like that.
We've been married 19. We started dating a couple of years before that, and we met a couple of years before that. So we've known each other for 25 years. Oh, and I totally forgot that he also is a Halloween birthday kid. So,
oh, really?
On top of everything, we also are celebrating Mr. Collins. So, we've known each other for 25 years.
Wow.
We've been married for 19. And we're still, like, most of the time, super like each other. We don't always, don't always agree on everything, but we're still good friends underneath it all, no matter what.
I completely understand that. My wife and I will have 35 years in March, but
oh my goodness,
our 32-year-old was born on October 29th, and he actually came home on Halloween 32 years ago. So he wasn't here.
Oh my goodness.
He's out on the West Coast doing his job. But anyway, so you've been married about 19 years, but now you've been in what we call, let's just say, I call the best house district. District 14. It's been my home since 1992, and you've been in the district for almost 15 years, right?
Well, we moved to Knoxville in 2008, but we didn't move into this district until 2009. So it's only 13. It's like a third of your time here, but it was our only choice for where we wanted to move permanently. And at that time, we only had one kid, but we knew we wanted more, and this is where we wanted to raise our family, and these were the schools we wanted to go to. So I don't think there's a better part of Knox County than our little that corner over here.
That's right. Well, the House District 14, for those that are listening, kind of starts up around Lakeshore Park and kind of runs west down North Shore and includes all of Farragut for the most part. That's kind of the skinny of it. So you went to Berry College and got a degree in psychology. You went to Georgia State and got a graduate degree in school psychology, and then you you entered a doctoral internship, I'm assuming, because you've basically been in school psychology. So I suspect after almost 30 minutes on the Brian Hornback Experience, there's going to be some great psychological something about this podcast, right?
Oh, Brian, I don't need 30 minutes. When you've done it as long as I have. No, I'm teasing. I have been a huge, honestly, I knew I wanted to be a school psychologist, which is actually a very kind of, it's all of the psychologies in one, but you do it in school since I was in middle school myself. And it's a fairly niche area, but I have always had a heart for just supporting folks' mental health, their emotional needs, their social needs, and particularly kids in school, so that those things are taken care of, so that they can get the most that they can out of their education, so that those things are not barriers or impediments to them taking the learning that we're able to give them. And so I love my career. I love the things I get to do as part of it, and I love how I'm able to advocate for some students and families who might not be having the easiest time of things, but we can get in there and we can do what we can to help them out. I love being able to do that.
Well, after your career at Knox County Schools and school psychology, you picked the right time to retire, because you retired right at the beginning of COVID. So you picked a great time to retire, didn't you?
I did. And it was not COVID related, but it was health related for me.
Right.
But, it was just about perfect. But I will say that also when I started to be able to kind of once I was no longer employed by Knox County, I was able to start getting louder with all of my variety of advocacy efforts. And it was the right time. People needed a voice, particularly someone who had been in our schools, who had been working with the kids and the families who have the greatest needs in the building, and the educators who are trying to meet those needs, plus also, teach some stuff.
Right.
And so I couldn't see the path, but I, was doing all of the listening and was so happy, so grateful to be able to serve in a very different way once I had retired.
Right.
I couldn't have predicted it, but it was a beautiful thing.
Oh, absolutely. So that's kind of what's funny, is that when you're able to sit back and reflect, then you find yourself moving in another direction. I don't think former Senator Howard Baker. I met him when I was about 18 years old. I was working at the Walgreens on the Cumberland Avenue Strip, which is still there. Miss Joy had been admitted into Fort Sanders Hospital, and he traveled down from Huntsville to see Miss Joy right before he became President Reagan's chief of staff, and he had forgotten his alarm clock. So he came to Walgreens to buy an alarm clock, and so I had a chance to talk to him. I'm like, Senator Baker, what do you tell a young guy that has been active in campaigns? And he said, the only thing that I remember him saying is, son, you can't get a blood transfusion, so just enjoy the ride. So here I am, 56 years old, been doing this for 40 years, and just things continue to evolve. I mean, in 2004, blogs were big. I started a blog. Now here I am going, why am I doing a podcast where I'm looking at an iPhone doing a recording while I'm talking to somebody else on a phone, and then I'm posting this to the internet? But hey, it evolves. So
it does.
Before we get into your campaign platform, I do want to mention to folks that you and your family are members of Westminster Presbyterian Church, great Presbyterian church. I'm an ordained deacon. Well, I'm a former deacon, and I'm an ordained elder in the Presbyterian Church USA. I was in East Minister out in East Knox County, or East Knoxville, before my wife and I moved to West Knoxville. So hey, Presbyterian Church. It's a great church. I mean, I'm just gonna say.
And I grew up Southern Baptist actually. So
see, we're doing the exact opposite. So I grew up in the USA Church, and we came to West Knoxville. We wound up Southern Baptist, and you're doing the exact opposite. But that's okay.
Mm-hmm. I did. We used to go through Knoxville every summer on our way to the Asheville area to a Southern Baptist campus, conference campus, Ridgecrest. It's Black Mountain for Music Week.
Yep.
Every summer. And so while we were at Ridgecrest, we had some flexible afternoons, and we would always go over to Montreat to poke around their gift shop and their bookstore, and it's a beautiful, beautiful campus just to enjoy it. And I got to tell you, that's one of the things that really kind of spoke to me in the first place about PCUSA was the difference in the bookstores. You know, at the Lifeway shop at Ridgecrest, it was Bibles, which I loved.
Right.
Because I like having a couple of different ones on me.
Yep.
But then we would go over to Montreat, and they had Bibles, but then they also had books about spirituality and psychology, and books about social work, and books about advocacy, and books about community organizing. And so it just really it pinged my heart that I already had for those types of things. And then I went to Barry, and it was no longer affiliated with the Methodist Church. And so I would go to church on campus or go to non-denominational churches, and it just kind of evolved that PCUSA is where I landed and where I needed to be. So, everybody's journey through all of that is different, but that means that you and I can speak the same languages.
Yep. Well, and
each of them and understand it.
At least once or every couple of years in our Southern Baptist Sunday School class, there'll be a brief moment for me to bring up predestination, and of course, I get shot down. I get shot down every time I start to bring it up. But so there's lots of John Calvin stuff, and there's lots of there's a lot of Martin Luther stuff. I mean, there's just great stuff. But anyway, that's not what we're here to talk about.
I can talk about that all day, too.
Oh, I know. But hey, you are running for state representative, House District 14. We've already mentioned that. You are early voting is going on now through November the 3rd. Election day is a week from today. Tuesday. We're recording this a week from the day of election. So you've got basically 4 things on your website. And let me say, you're one of the few candidates that I can say has branding down pat, because your website is Amanda, AmandaFortn.com. Your Instagram is Amanda4TN. Your Facebook is Amanda4TN. Your Twitter is Amanda4TN. And your LinkedIn is Amanda4TN. So you got the branding down perfect. So we'll repeat that. We'll repeat that again before we get out of here. But 4 things that I noticed on your website that are kind of your campaign platform, and I'm just going to introduce one and let you talk about it. The first one is protect women's health. Talk about your thoughts on if Amanda Collins or when Amanda Collins is state representative. How does protecting women's health? How does that parlay into the House District 14 and your representation in the State House?
So since I decided to run,
right.
So after that, again, this is part of but you follow in the dirt. You're doing what you've been told to do, but you might not know exactly why. The Dobbs decision did reverse Roe, which put into place Tennessee's trigger ban from 2018 on all abortions in the state. I have 3 daughters. I am a huge advocate for women, for equality, not only for myself, but because I have brought kiddos into the world, and that kind of is a contract as a parent that you either it's a great place already, or you're going to do everything that you can to continue to keep them safe and healthy. So given Tennessee's trigger ban, which I think a lot of people, I have talked to voters, I will say, particularly voters who have moved into the state and don't realize that it has no current exceptions in it. And I will tell you, as a woman who did grow up Southern Baptist, where the message was usually that abortions were for, I'm going to be as diplomatic as I can, but the message was that abortions were for loose women who made bad choices. Over my life, as a woman who has had 3 pregnancies, had 3 labors and deliveries, have so many friends who have had very different kinds of parenting journeys, I have learned, I have been reprogrammed to understand that that is not what abortion is, that there are very good reasons to have what politicians refer to as abortions and various medical procedures that aren't because of things that we would necessarily denounce in the pew on a Sunday. A lot of it is related to just basic women's health that the wider population doesn't always understand. And so when we have 0 exceptions in our law, we are putting the lives of mothers in danger. And particularly given that there is no exception for the life of the mother. And I also like to remind people that sometimes it's not even just the life of the mother, it is the reproductive future of the mother if something goes wrong. At this point, our medical providers have to make a decision in an emergency situation about whether it's worth being charged with a crime to save this woman's life. And how would they be able to justify that in front of a jury of not necessarily medically trained peers? So it's very important to me to be able to add back in those safety procedures for women, for mothers, to protect them, because at this time they are not protected. On top of the fact that we additionally have no exceptions for rape, incest, or child abuse. And, you know, I have 3 daughters, and I do everything that I can to keep them safe, but that does not guarantee that something horrible might not happen. And what I know is that I would want them to have, and as a parent, if my minor children are in a situation where they have been raped or abused and are pregnant, I want to have all of the options available to me to be able to make the right choice for that child of mine.
Right. Well, and that's
we don't have that at this time.
Yeah, and I mentioned Howard Baker. Howard Baker from the mid '80s until he ultimately retired. Always said that there should be three exceptions, and that's rape, incest, and life of the mother. So we also talk about family budget. I assume that has a lot to do with where the state is currently spending its money. And then the last 2 are kind of tied together about schools. So let's talk about kind of what you've seen just in the budgetary process of the legislature and what you think the legislature should be spending their money on. And then after that, we're going to go into a broader discussion about schools.
I get frustrated with our state leaders in Nashville who like to focus on how we have reduced spending and how much money we have saved and stashed away, while there are Tennessee families who are in crisis and in need right now. It feels like we are intentionally hoarding our resources and not using them to protect and support our families. One of the things that I have been advocating for, I don't know if you're aware, and this does a little bit tie into schools, but for the past couple of years, the federal government has been providing free breakfast and lunch to all public schools.
Right.
That for all students in public schools. And that was eliminated this year because it was a pandemic issue and things are a little different now. But that, combined with some of the economic realities, really has put a lot of families in a bind. And I know that not everybody in our district necessarily feels that. But when you work in public schools, you are working exactly with the folks who do feel it. We see that on a daily basis. There are plenty of families who might qualify for the USDA free reduced lunch program, but they are ashamed to apply for it. There are plenty of families who are right on the cusp of it. Mm-hmm. If there are ways that we can take some of our Tennessee resources to help those families out, I want us to do that. Well, I want us to be the kind of neighbors and the kind of community who help each other out when things are rough. Because on any day, it could be our own families who are experiencing the same kind of struggle. And we have to understand and we have to be compassionate with that. But on top of that, there are bigger issues that we have. And I'm going back to kids, but our DCS is basically shambles right now. They are struggling to find caseworkers. They're struggling to find foster families. They are struggling to find housing and facilities for children who have been removed from their families for safety reasons. And so when we brag about how much we have in a surplus or rainy day fund, but at the same time we're staring down the face of a hungry kiddo or a kid who's sleeping on an office floor, that convicts me. I feel like we are doing a bigger wrong than just a policy type disagreement when we are looking at people who need help, bragging about, kind of flaunting the resources that we do have, but that we're not using on their behalf. And I can't do that as a neighbor. I can't do that as a person. And that's where those budgetary issues come from. So I think that there are ways absolutely at all times to better manage our state budget and our state resources. But I think that we have to make space in that for the people who need our help right this minute and find a way to help them.
Well, and as a parent, you think about a child being in school, and it's hard enough for a child to be in a classroom of 15, 20, 25 kids trying to absorb the information, but then if they're sitting there with a stomach that's not properly nourished, or they're worrying about whether they're going to have a meal at home, or whether it's unconscionable to really think about that. And you bring up an interesting point, and that's the fact that there were news stories about the fact that DCS here in Knoxville had kids sleeping in the floor of the DCS state office building, and so there's that's a real greater problem. We're already 24 minutes in, so we got about 5 more minutes here, but and I don't mean to rush it, but I only signed up for 30 minutes because Seinfeld was 30 minutes, and I can't hold anybody's attention longer than that. But, it's interesting, though. Just want to talk because I watched a little bit of the League of Women Voters Forum last week that you participated in, and you also made a interesting point about $3 billion in surplus, but we're still not, even with the change from the BEP to the TISA or TESA or whatever we're calling it today, we're still not fulfilling the commitments that we've made to school districts across this state. And so we're still not funding schools at a state level or local level to the degree that they should. And we can argue about whether there's enough money or not enough money. We're not making that argument tonight. But just talk about. Obviously, you've got experience as a school psychologist, So you've been in the schools, you've seen the schools. I've been a school board member. I've seen from a school board member the perspective. But as we finish up, just kind of talk about your thoughts on student mental health and public schools and all that good stuff.
Our schools, and I mean our Knox County schools that I've been in, and I mean exactly our District 14 Knox County schools are understaffed. Understaffed in terms of classroom educators, understaffed in terms of the ratio of school counselors and school social workers, school nurses and school psychologists to our students. Our buildings are, we are severely understaffed with custodians and have been so for probably a decade. And that's a problem that just keeps snowballing. I, worked with an assistant principal who I discovered had been the one clandestinely cleaning the staff bathrooms because there was nobody else to do it. That's a servant leader right there. I'll tell you what. And so we are doing a huge disservice to the students, but also our communities by undermining our public schools as we continue not to fund them in the way that we said that we would, that Nashville said that they would do for each district. And what a lot of people don't understand about the new program is that it takes money from public schools, puts them towards non-public options that do not serve all students, and it phases out the state level support over time so that there are monies that have to end up being accounted for by the local communities. People aren't looking at the whole thing. They're looking at it the next year or two and saying, oh, this sounds great, or it sounds the same. And they're not looking at the longer term part of it where we are hurting ourselves by supporting it. On top of that, right here in our own district that we have very much struggled with suicide and suicide prevention. We have struggled with being able to find the community support for the students who are in mental health and behavioral health and addiction crisis, because we don't have those. And so part of what makes that so difficult is that the state is not friendly to providers of those services and is not actively trying to recruit those services to our areas. So it's a jumble of, I think, really incorrect priorities that continue to undermine our Tennessee public schools. I have knocked on so many doors where they said, the schools are why we moved here, but that was 10 years ago. Now,
Right.
So, it's making a difference. Even people who don't have kids in school right now are seeing the decline, and we can't do this. We cannot do it ethically, morally. We cannot let down our families the way that we continue to do. And again, as I said before, while we're bragging about all of our surplus funds, that money is nothing if it's not being put to helping other people.
That's right.
So,
well, Amanda,
I'll stop there.
Yeah, we're right at 29 minutes. So I appreciate you being on the Brian Hornback Experience. I hope we can have you back and just ask for everybody's vote, and we'll see how things happen on November the 8th.
Thank you so much, Brian. I really appreciate it, and I love having an ally in the community with me for our families.
Absolutely.
I appreciate you.
Good luck, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank
you.
Bye-bye.